Forest and Wildlife Resources by Adya Bhardwaj, roll number 3 from 10C. Hello everyone, I'm Adya Bhardwaj. Today I'm going to present my topic on forest and wildlife resources. Before going further, I want to thank my principal, my teachers, and especially Ms. Seema for giving me this opportunity to make and present this presentation. I also want to thank my parents and family members for supporting me. Introduction. The variety of life on Earth. Its biological diversity is commonly referred to as biodiversity. The number of species of plants, animals, and microorganisms, the enormous diversity of genes in these species, the different ecosystems on the planet such as deserts, rainforests, and coral reefs are all part of a biologically diverse Earth. Appropriate conservation and sustainable development strategies attempt to recognize this as being integral to any approach to preserving biodiversity. Almost all cultures have their roots in our biological diversity in some way or form. Declining biodiversity is therefore a concern for many reasons. Biodiversity in India. In India, there are more than 89,000 animal species and about 45,000 plant species. India is one of the world's most biodiverse regions and one of the 17 megadiverse countries. The popular fauna of India includes 500 different varieties of mammals, 2,000 species of birds, 30,000 types of insects, and several varieties of fish, amphibians, and reptiles. Elephants, Royal Bengal tigers, rhinos, bisons, lions are some of the common fauna found in the country. There are estimated to be over 18,000 species of flowering plants in India. India has one of the richest flora in the whole world. Why is biodiversity necessary? Biodiversity boosts ecosystem productivity. For example, a larger number of plant species means a greater variety of crops. Greater species diversity ensures natural sustainability for all life forms. Healthy ecosystems can better withstand and recover from a variety of disasters. And so, while we dominate this planet, we still need to preserve the biodiversity in wildlife. At least 40% of the world's economy and 80% of the needs of the poor are derived from biological resources. In addition, the richer the diversity of life, the greater the opportunity for medical discoveries, economic development, and adaptive responses to such new challenges as climate change, said by the Convention about Life on Earth. A healthy biodiversity provides a number of natural services for everyone. It includes ecosystem services such as protection of water resources and soil formation and protection, biological resources such as food, medical resources, and wood products, social benefits such as research, education, and monitoring, etc. That is quite a lot of services we get for free. The cost of replacing these, if possible, would be extremely expensive. It therefore makes economic and development sense to move towards sustainability. Forest cover in India. Forest cover is a total geographical area declared as forest by the government. The forest cover in India is measured by Forest Survey of India. According to the 2019 report, the total forest cover of the country is 7,12,249 square kilometers, 21.67% of India's total geographical area. whereas the total forest and tree cover in India is 8,07,276 square kilometers, 80.73 million hectares, which is 24.56% of total geographical area. Now, this is IUCN, the International Union of Conservation of Nature. IUCN Red List of 13 species, also known as the IUCN Red List or Red Data List, founded in 1964, is the world's most comprehensive inventory of the global conservation status of biological species. It uses a set of criteria to evaluate the extinction risk of thousands of species and subspecies. These criteria are relevant to all species and all regions of the world. With its strong scientific base, the IUCN Red List is recognized as the most authoritative guide to the status of biological diversity. A series of regional red lists are produced by countries or organizations which assess the risk of extinction to species within a political management unit. The number of species included on the red list has been increasing over time. As of 2019, of 105,000 species surveyed, 28,338 are considered at risk of extinction because of human activity, in particular overfishing, hunting, and land development. The IUCN Red List Index provides a clearer view of real trends within different taxonomic groups and for biodiversity as a whole. The Red List Index is available for groups in which all species have been assessed at least twice. Currently, the index is available for 5 groups: birds, mammals, amphibians, corals, and cycads. The RLI clearly demonstrates that the status of these 5 major groups continues to decline. Let's take a look at this cartoon. Classification of species based on IUCN. Classification of species based on IUCN. Species are classified by the IUCN Red List into 9 groups, specified through criteria such as rate of decline, population size, area of geographic distribution, then degree of population and distribution fragmentation. Extinct. Beyond reasonable doubt that the species is no longer present on the earth. Extinct in the wild, survives only in captivity, cultivation, and or outside native range as presumed after exhaustive surveys. Critically endangered, in a particularly and extremely critical state. Endangered, very high risk of extinction in the wild, meets any of criteria A to E for endangered. Vulnerable, meets one of the 5 red list criteria and thus considered to be at high risk of unnatural human-caused extinction without further human intervention. Near threatened, close to being at risk, high risk of extinction in the near future. Least concern, likely to become extinct in the near future. Data deficient and not evaluated. There are short notes on all of them. Now, status of plants and animals. Of the total 63,837 species globally assessed plant and animals, the IUCN classified the numbers as below. In 2012, 81 as extinct, 63 as extinct in the wild, 3,947 as critically endangered, 5,766 species in endangered, 10,104 in vulnerable, 4,467 in neothreatened, 10,497 species are deficient. Now let's take a look at various species in India. This is the pink head duck and the Asiatic cheetah, which have gone extinct in India and in the whole world. Then you can see the photo of clouded leopard and gaur, which are currently in the vulnerable category. Next is a photo of red panda and the steppe eagle, which are endangered. Then comes the Kashmir stag and the great Indian bustard, which are critically endangered. Classification of forests. In India, much of its forest and wildlife resources are either owned or managed by the government through the Forest Department. Forests are classified into the following categories. Reserve forests. More than half of the total land has been declared reserved forests. Reserve forests are regarded as the most valuable as far as the conservation of forests and wildlife resources are concerned. Protected forest. Almost one-third of the total forest is protected forest as declared by the Forest Department. This forest land is protected from any further depletion. Unclassed forests. There are other forests and wastelands belonging to both government and private communities. Now, causes of depletion of forests and wildlife resources. Someone has rightly said that what humans are doing to forests and wildlife is just but a minor reflection of what they are doing to themselves and one another. Human wood, barks, leaves, rubber, medicines, dyes, fuel, fodder results in depletion of flora. Hunting and poaching of wildlife, overexploitation, environmental pollution are some factors which lead to the depletion of fauna. Shifting cultivation, overpopulation, mining, large-scale development projects, grazing and fuel wood collection, there are countless of them. Conservation of forests and wildlife resources. India is one of the mega diverse countries in the world. It has a variety of flora and fauna. Following are some of the major steps for conservation of forests. With the advent of industrialization, several trees have been cut at an alarming rate. This felling of trees can be regulated by selective cutting, clear cutting, and shelter wood cutting. Forest fire are one of the common causes of loss of forests. Latest firefighting techniques should be adopted to conserve the forests. More trees should be planted to increase the forest cover. Prevention of exploitation of forests and forest production is necessary for the conservation of forests. Wildlife can be conserved by developing protective areas such as national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, etc. The endangered and vulnerable species can be kept in captivity. Their cutting of forests should be strictly prohibited. Hunting of wild animals should be banned. Why is it necessary? Wildlife and forests should be conserved for the following reasons. Wildlife and forests are the measure of biodiversity of a particular region. By conserving the wildlife and forest, we are ensuring that all diverse species in an area survive, breed, and flourish. Conservation of wildlife and forest is vital for the ecological stability of a particular area. It is important that we conserve wildlife and forest which we have inherited because they constitute our most precious wealth. Forest and habitat are the important constituent of various food chains and food webs. Forests are necessary for the formation of humus and for maintaining soil fertility. Forests purify air and protect the earth from greenhouse gases. Many industries such as sport equipment industry, paper industry, lac manufacturing industry, the timber industry and furniture industry depend on forests. Forests provide a place for local people for the animals to graze. Many food, medicine, dyes, sandalwood and bamboo is obtained from forests, and there are a variety of other reasons too. Now, what has government done? Conservation is necessary to preserve the ecological diversity and our life support systems such as air, water, and soil. In response to the conservationist demand, the Indian Wildlife Protection Act came into action in the year 1972. This act provided several provisions for protecting habitats. The primary agenda of the program was to protect the remaining population of the certain endangered species by banning hunting, giving legal protection to their habitats, and restricting trade in wildlife. For this, the central and the state governments established different national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. The central government had also come up with different projects for protecting specific animals which were gravely threatened, including the tiger, the one-horned rhinoceros, and others. In the year 1973, Government of India came up with the Project Tiger to save the endangered species of tiger in the country. Now, under the Wildlife Act of 1980 and 1986, several hundred butterflies, moths, beetles, and one dragonfly have been added to the list of protected species. In the year 1991, plants were also added to the list. Now, what is the role of the community? Communities have conserved and protected forests and wildlife in India in the following ways. In Sariska Tiger Reserve, Rajasthani villagers have fought against mining by citing the Wildlife Protection Act. In many areas, villagers themselves are protecting habitats and explicitly rejecting government involvement. Many states have launched a joint forest management program to involve local communities in the management and restoration of degraded forests. Odisha was the first state to launch this program. The inhabitants of 5 villages in the Alwar district of Rajasthan have declared about 1200 hectares of forest areas the Bhairo Dev Dakav Sanctuary. Now, what are the community movements? I will be talking about the top 3 major ones. Chipko movement in 1973. The 1980s saw the debate on environment move from just deforestation to the larger issues of depletion of natural resources. In the wake of reckless deforestation, a unique movement has bubbled. The 1980s saw the debate on environment move from just deforestation to larger issues of depletion of natural resources. Chipko movement in the Garhwal Himalayas shoved aside urban armchair naturalists. Led by Chandni Prasad Bhatt and Sundarlal Bahuguna, it was a people's revolt against mindless deforestation. And they did this simply by hugging trees when the woodmen came to axe them. Now, the sound of nature, the Silent Valley Project 1978. The Silent Valley Hydroelectric Project was to dam the Kunti-Puzha River. It was a battlefield of personal agendas between the then Prime Minister Morarji Desai, the Kerala government, and the environmentalists. The Silent Valley Hydroelectric Project was to dam the Kunti-Puzha River, submerging the entire biosphere reserve and destroying its 4-million-year-old rainforests. In 1980, the MGK Menon Committee, set up to review the project, came out with a recommendation to scrap it. With 40% of its so-called surplus power being supplied to the other parts and many villages of Kerala waiting to be electrified, this grassroots movement became the bedrock of Indian environmental activism. Now, rescue mission Jangal Bachao Andolan in 1980s. Most states exist in the bliss of ignorance. It was the observation that led to the birth of the Jangal Bachao Andolan that began in Bihar and later spread to states like Jharkhand and Orissa. The tribals of Singhbhum district of Bihar bubbled up a protest when the government decided to replace the natural sal forest with highly priced teak, a move that was termed a green game political populism. Other movements include Reaping Gachas Navadanya movement 1982, whether it's about empowering women or anti-globalization campaigns. Environmental activist Vandana Shiva has always had an upper hand in her fights against the authorities. Her eco-feminist movement reinstated a farming system centered on engaging women, changing the current system. She founded Navdanya in 1982, an organization promoting biodiversity, conservation, and organic farming. The organization has not only helped create markets for farmers, but also promoted quality food for consumers, connecting the seed to the cooked food. Different Route Development Alternatives 1983 labeled the Green Duo. Ashok Khosla empowered people by creating jobs through development alternatives, an NGO that he founded in 1983. He began work towards financial, social, and environmental sustainability at a grassroots level. Over the years, his 15 environmentally sound and commercially viable technologies have generated more than 3 lakh jobs across India. Now the Narmada Bachao Andolan in 1985. Narmada Bachao Andolan announced the arrival of the Indian Greens, protesting against destructive development. It was led by Medha Patkar. You can see her photo inside. One of the largest and the most successful environmental campaigns, Narmada Bachao Andolan, began with a wide development agenda, questioning the very rationale of large dam projects in India. Other projects include Sustaining Forests, Tarun Bharat Sangh 1985, Averting Disaster, Saving the Western Ghat 1988, Beach Bachao Andolan, and The Taste of War. I'll be telling a little about Beach Bachao Andolan. Vijay Jardhari and his fellow farmers started the Beach Bachao Andolan (BBA) Save the Seed movement at the small village Jardhargaon in Tehri, Uttarakhand in 1986. The movement remains unregistered and is more like a people's campaign. The Climate Crusader, the Research and Energy Institute. Now, conservation at international level. Wildlife conservation refers to the practice of protecting wild species and their habitats in order to prevent species from going extinct. Major threats to wildlife include habitat destruction, degradation, fragmentation, overexploitation, poaching, pollution, and climate change. Prominent conservation agreements between countries include the 1973 Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora (CITES) and the 1992 Convention of Biological Diversity (CBD). There are also numerous non-government organizations (NGOs) dedicated to the conservation, such as the Nature Conservancy, World Wildlife Fund, and the Conservation International. Now, conventions are international level. CITES. CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Flora and Fauna, also known as Washington Convention, is a multilateral treaty to protect endangered plants and animals. It was drafted as a result of resolution adopted in 1963 at a meeting of members of the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Its aim is to ensure that international trade in specimens of wild animals and plants does not threaten the survival of the species in the wild. As of 2018, Secretary General of the CITES Secretariat is Ivani Higuero. Now, the Ramsar Convention. The Ramsar Convention on Wetlands of International Importance, especially as waterfowl habitat, is an international treaty for the conservation and sustainable use of wetlands. It is also known as the Convention of Wetlands. It is named after the city of Ramsar in Iran, where the convention was signed in 1971. Every 3 years, representatives of the contracting parties meet as the conference of the contracting parties, the policy-making organ of the convention, which adopts decisions, resolutions, and recommendations to administer the work of the convention and improve the way in which the parties are able to implement its objectives. Now, UNFCCC. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. UNFCCC is an international environmental treaty adopted on 9 May 1992 and opened for signature at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. The UNFCCC objective is to stabilize greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere at a level that would prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. Then, International Convention of the Regulation on Whaling. The International Convention for the Regulation of Whaling is an international agreement signed in 1946 in order to provide for the proper conservation of whale stocks and thus makes possible the orderly development of the whaling industry. It governs the commercial, scientific, and aboriginal subsistence whaling practice of 89 member nations. From the dynamics of both environmental destruction and reconstruction in India, with our local communities everywhere have to be involved in some kind of natural resource management. But there is still a long way to go before local communities are at the center stage in the decision making, except only those economic or developmental activities that are people centric, environmental friendly, and economically rewarding. I want to end my presentation with a quote by Gautam Buddha. The tree is a peculiar organism of unlimited kindness and benevolence, and makes no demand for its sustenance, and extends generously the products of its life activity. It affords protection to all beings, offering shade even to the axemen who destroy it. The end. Thanks you for watching.